So maybe we should start, and the rest of the participants will join a little bit later, I hope.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just welcome everybody. Thanks for joining today's or this morning's presentation. So we're going to cover, look at what bug bounty is in general. We'll also take a look at the expected ROI from running a bug bounty program in today's webinar. My name is Gareth O'Sullivan. I'm a senior member of the Trust and Security team at Bugcrowd. I've been involved in application security for quite a long time. Background in automated testing technologies and service delivery. Also background in software development and engineering and testing. Today's agenda for the webinar will cover a few key areas. It's not going to entirely focus on ROI, but we'll get into how bug bounty programs work. We'll touch on expected return on investment from running bug bounty programs and the types of things that you should expect. If we get time, we might spend a bit of part of this call and webinar looking at the platform itself and how we manage different types of programs for customers through our platform. So we look at defining what security ROI is. To some extent, it may mean different things to different organizations. We'll take a look at crowdsourcing and what that is and where that can support ROI. We'll also view bug bounty in the context of its impact generally on operations and pen testing and where it can kind of fit in. We did some research with Forrester recently, and that enables us to kind of build a framework for understanding the total economic impact of bug bounty as well. Then we'll take a look at some KPIs. Like I said, if we get some time, we can take a look at the platform itself. I don't know if we want to answer questions on the call today. We can maybe do that too, and then we can wrap up. So that's today's agenda. So first, let's take a look at defining security ROI. Now, it may mean different things to different organizations. I think most people understand the concept of return on investment, and there are a range of different formulas out there that could potentially ascribe to your organization. But ultimately, I think ROI, given ROI may mean different things to different organizations. We'll take a look at what you should expect when you kind of commit budget to a testing process, and how bug bounty can improve things for organizations. We also want to factor in, does the current state of the art offer good ROI? Do the testing practices that you currently employ give you good value for money and good return on your investment? It's also probably appropriate to consider why organizations are conducting security testing. There's probably different reasons. They're outlined here. Best practices. It's just something that you should do because it reduces risk, helps you identify vulnerabilities that could be exploited, and so on. Maybe compliance is driving your reasons to conduct security testing. There's different regulations. Some of them prescribe pen testing or testing, some don't, but usually auditors look for testing as part of an overall framework in order to successfully audit an organization. Excuse me. If you're just doing testing for risk reduction, it's another good approach. It kind of fits into best practice, but typically security testing is a good thing to do to avoid any negative impacts from potential exploits. And overall, if you're just trying to avoid being hacked, it's another good reason to employ security testing of different types. And so we look at where bug bounty fits into that. Overall, we tend to recommend that, as practitioners, that you're doing good quality testing to find and identify vulnerabilities that could be exploited, not just trying to tick a box and kind of intend to comply with something because you have to comply. It's usually a good idea to kind of kill two birds with one stone: comply, but also try and identify any problems that might exist within your attack surface. So unfortunately, that the case has been that some organizations will run testing just purely out of necessity to comply with different regulations, but that isn't always necessarily the best approach. So we tend to see organizations kind of, as a result of kind of these drivers, we tend to see organizations are kind of stuck in the middle between doing things just because they're mandated or because they have to comply with something, and then on the other side, obviously, one of the kind of the positive outcomes from doing testing and identifying vulnerabilities is to reduce your risk. So there's a kind of an in-between position that a lot of organizations find themselves in, where they're trying to comply with stuff, and that may be the primary driver to do security testing. But maybe a lot of that security testing isn't really genuinely reducing the risk because it might be missing stuff. It's not going deep enough. Things are getting overlooked because of the types of testing that they're performing. So a lot of organizations unfortunately find themselves stuck in the middle in this within this kind of testing chasm, as we call it. So traditional testing, security testing ostensibly started through organizations leveraging consultants who had expertise in identifying problems within different sort of digital assets that are connected to the internet, and there can be a wide range of different things that organizations deploy to the web, and so that's kind of where this field started. Either doing internal testing, organizations running testing themselves using tools or expertise that they've got within an internal team, or maybe outsourcing some of that testing to consultants. The problem with those approaches, unfortunately, are while you may have good skills within those teams, you might be able to find good quality consultants to help you run testing. Oftentimes, scalability is an issue. You may not be able to identify or retain the level of talent that you need to continually maintain good quality testing. The approach is inefficient. It's not scalable, and it may not effectively reduce your risk ultimately. Now, bearing that in mind, scanners and automated approaches to security testing have sort of made an impact to some extent over the years. But unfortunately, again, with scanners or even with some pen testing capabilities, they can be quite noisy. They may be good at finding kind of what we describe as low-hanging fruit or low-impact findings, but maybe they're not terribly actionable. There's very little value in identifying a lot of the stuff that scanners and maybe some kind of light touch pen testing engagements would typically uncover. So it kind of reduces productivity to some extent. And then if you're doing kind of internal self-managed feedback, it can limit trust within the organization. You may not get good visibility of the real issues that exist within your assets and within your organization. So traditional testing can slow you down. It makes it hard to reduce risk, unfortunately. Bugcrowd has developed what we call a knowledge platform to help facilitate delivery of a range of different security testing options. We're here primarily to focus on bug bounty, but in recent years, our pen testing capability has seen a huge amount of interest. We also have disclosure programs. We also do additional activities like attack surface management, testing, and so on as well, and discovery. All of that is managed through a centralized platform. And within that platform, then we have a range of workflow integrations that we can bring to bear to help organizations manage and deal with the output from those different engagements more easily. So the platform is quite flexible. While we have well-defined engagement types, and because we have access to a very large pool of talent, which you can see here on the left in this slide, we've got hackers and pen testers out on the left. They have a dashboard that they use to engage themselves in different testing programs. That can be bounty programs, pen tests, and so on. On the right, we have a customer dashboard, which has a range of capabilities, like it mentions. So there's machine learning driven crowd curation capability built in, so that we're able to drive the right hackers to the engagement based on their skills, based on their capabilities, based on their interests in testing and helping identify issues in specific technology stacks. We have an internal team who do all the validation and triage for results that flow through the different program types. Hugely important. We talked about automated testing earlier, and one of the big issues with using tools is obviously that they are very false positive heavy, as other testing options can be. So validation and triage is a huge value add. We have an internal team that helps review all findings that come through all the different program types that we run. We've got a range of workflow orchestration capabilities and automation capabilities. So that's anything from connectors for Jira, ServiceNow, Slack integrations for alerting, and so on. There's a range of different kind of I guess we can kind of style as DevOps style integrations built in to enable customers to move the results that are found from the different programs that we run into internal systems that they're already using to track vulnerabilities and so forth. So customers don't have to spend too much time in our platform if they don't want to. But there are quite a lot of useful analytics and reporting capabilities in there as well that they can make use of too. So that's the security knowledge platform. Moving on. Crowdsourcing enters the security ROI chat. So we'll delve into what crowdsourcing is, how we've been leveraging it, the value and so forth that can be brought to bear by crowdsourcing your security testing requirements and engagements. We touched on this earlier, the evolution of crowdsourced cybersecurity. Bugcrowd have spent years of investment in building the platform that we talked about in the last slide. And it's really designed to enable us to deliver programs at scale. So irrespective of the type of testing that you think you need, we can probably design a program that meets that requirement. And it's designed for scale. It's designed to give you as much return on investment as we can possibly deliver. And we're committed to kind of long-term innovation through that platform to deliver value back to our customers. So if we go back in time, we look at the advent of kind of security testing. Much of it was driven through security consulting. And again, there's all sorts of kind of pros and cons of that model. But you can boil it down to that expertise is limited. It's hard to access. If you're working through traditional consultancy model, it can be sometimes you might have to work with noisy, low impact tools. It was very early, so there was limited historical data, integrations, tooling, DevSecOps and so on. That didn't exist back in the 90s and early noughties. So integrations were, integrating and consuming the results in an easy way was difficult. And it was often a bespoke delivery. So you have to kind of go through fairly detailed scoping effort in order to and maybe quite a long lead time too in order to run those types of consultancy programs. Moving forward then into the 2010s, that's where kind of early bug bounty and our commercial efforts started to kind of appear. In the early days, the crowd engagement, curation, management was kind of coarse and hit and miss and patchy. It was somewhat niche, I guess. It was considered somewhat niche, limited historical data, limited DevSecOps or DevSec integrations, and again, kind of patchy delivery models and capabilities. Moving into the 2020s now, we've got, it's much better capabilities built into the platform. Bugcrowd itself has a multi-purpose, obviously, SaaS platform that we talked about. There's AI-powered crowd matching. We've got engineered triage, extensive vulnerability and asset intelligence built into the platform. We have a recent acquisition where we brought asset discovery into the equation, and there's extensive DevSecOps and DevSec integrations. CI/CD even into pushing stuff back into the continuous integration, continuous delivery stage of application development. So that's kind of the evolution of crowdsourced security. What does it give back? One of the significant benefits of crowdsourced security is access to skills, which we keep hearing is shrinking. So access to the right type of experts to help identify those gaps is shrinking, while demand for those skills is growing all the time. So with the ecosystem that we've built within Bugcrowd, we can really help organizations tap into a very large community of skilled researchers and hackers. So and we often see that access to those skills is potentially blocking organizations' progress in making themselves more secure. So as a model, consumers should already be quite familiar with this kind of on-demand type platform where you can kind of tap into, as it says here, an elastic supply of workers for various tasks. We see it with a range of platforms that offer different types of services where consumers can consume expertise. And there's no reason why, obviously the cybersecurity ecosystem shouldn't work the same way. So with Bugcrowd, like I said, we've got a very, very large crowd that we can tap into. Within that crowd, there's a huge range of specialized skills, and we can bring those skills to bear into different program types. And it can work alongside existing resources and budgets if it needs to. It can replace stuff if that makes sense. We make it very easy for customers to consume and get access to those skills and consume those skills in different sort of program environments and types. So very easy to work with. From a skills-based perspective, there's a huge volume of different types of skills in the crowd. No matter what kind of crowd, security testing crowd you sort of engage with, we've identified, an example here. There's about 350 skills that we've enabled to date, and growing. The crowd is growing. The community that we work with is growing all the time. And here's just an example of some of the skills that we can share with customers. And there's on the left, we've got an example of the different tech skills. And then on the right, we've got an example of the different industries that we work into. So we work into pretty much every industry and vertical that's known, to a huge amount into banking, financial services, which is not unusual. They usually are very well funded in that regard. But regardless of the vertical or industry that consumers of the service work in, we will typically have experience working with that vertical already, and consequently, we'll typically be able to find the right skills to align with expectations from those industries. So really broad range of skills, which you would just typically would not see if you were dealing with like a traditional managed security services practicing company. Moving on to the next slide. So as Casey Ellis is the founder of Bugcrowd, and one of his quotes some time ago was that hackers are kind of revolutionizing the internet's immune system. And what does that mean? I think when folks think of hackers, obviously they maybe there's a sort of negative impression of what hackers are, but ultimately the majority of the crowd where we crowdsource our security expertise comes from folks who consider themselves hackers. Now they may be hackers, but they may also have other jobs elsewhere. They may be pen testers, they might be security architects, and so on. There's a range of like, again, going back to the skills base, there's a range of different profiles of individuals who get involved in hacking and help us provide the expertise back into our customer base. So from a crowdsourcing perspective, again, it goes back to finding a large group of skilled people, giving them a task to complete, and doing it in a sort of controlled way. So in this case, you're kind of reaching out to Bugcrowd, who have those connections to the crowd, who are then able to bring that crowd to bear to help you achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve with your security programs. I think hopefully crowdsource security is somewhat clear based on some of the slides that we've covered already. But regardless, we do sometimes hear of this notion of crowd fear. So crowd fear comes up from time to time with regards to customers or organizations not really getting a good understanding of how bug bounty programs are put together and how they're managed. It's a legitimate issue for businesses considering adopting bug bounty programs. It can be a real concern, but it doesn't have to be. And ultimately, a Bugcrowd will operate as a kind of an honest broker between customers and the hacking community. We set expectations, we manage programs in a clear, curated manner. And the other reality, I guess, is that a lot of hackers like to hack for different reasons. You see here in this slide, the majority like to do it because it helps with personal development, so they can improve their skills. They get involved in programs with Bugcrowd, for example, and they get access to be able to test a huge range of different asset types that they wouldn't typically be able to maybe engage with otherwise. There's obviously money to be made, so bug bounty programs carry rewards. And if you're good at what you do and you can find things quickly, there's a significant financial gain from getting involved in hacking and on Bugcrowd's platform. And again, it's all managed and curated, and Bugcrowd are here to help customers manage that engagement and manage the payouts and so forth. Hackers get a great buzz from hacking as well. So there's excitement built in. There's a lot of challenges built in as well. Some folks are using bug hunting as one of their primary sources of income. So they're building a livelihood around it. They like to give back as well, and help organizations stay secure. So the greater good is a factor. And then 5% in this graph, it's just something to do. So there's different reasons. It's not always primarily financial, but being able to look after hackers for sharing their expertise is positive, and it means that organizations can use those skills they have access to make their organizations much more secure. So how do you trust the crowd, or how do we help you get a sense of that you're working with trusted actors. So there's different stages where Bugcrowd does kind of a verification of the folks involved in bounty programs and pen testing and all the other programs that we run. But ultimately, Bugcrowd are, kind of continuously assessing participants. So it's free to register an account on Bugcrowd's platform. There are many programs that are public that researchers or hackers can get involved in. And once you kind of register, that journey starts with Bugcrowd. So we'll continuously assess individuals and look at kind of scoring them based on their capabilities. We'll be looking at their skills. We get a feel for their motivations. There's kind of trustworthiness built up over time as they participate in different programs and submit kind of, well described, good quality submissions. We'll also get a sense for how reliable those individuals are, how well they collaborate, and just kind of overall their engagement as well, because they would be working quite closely with customers. They'll be working closely with our triage team. And we tend to feel that we kind of go beyond what most organizations do with regards to kind of engaging with the community. So, that journey in the funnel here kind of describes that journey from kind of being unknown to getting to a point where a researcher or hacker is high trust. And you'll see here there's different sort of access to different program types as they progress along that journey. So, without registering, you can just kind of see the platform and view public programs. Once you register an account with us, you get access to the publicly available programs. Then you can kind of move into private engagements and get sort of invited into those programs, which can be quite useful and beneficial. And then there's restricted engagements, high trust, where typically we're doing a lot of sort of pen testing engagements at that stage with researchers. So there's different things that we're doing from a verification standpoint at these different stages as well. So there's kind of account verification, the account itself, ID verification at some point, and maybe even background checks and so on as well. I can see that there's some Q&A coming through. If we want to ask questions during the session, feel free, but I can leave questions till the end. So what do we do about, or what is a bug bounty? What defines a bug bounty? So NIST endorsed it some time ago, where they encourage organizations to employ the use of financial incentives, i.e., bug bounties, to encourage external security researchers to help organizations discover vulnerabilities. But ultimately, it's designed as a proactive program to help incentivize researchers to help organizations identify vulnerabilities in your attack surface in an ethical way. Right, that's it in sort of simple terms. We've seen a wide range of adoption across all sorts of organizations of all different types and sizes. We run programs for startups who maybe are not all that mature along the security testing journey. We work with major financial companies, do a lot with different government agencies around the world as well. To some of the big hyperscale players like Google, Facebook, and Apple as well. So we work with it. It doesn't matter how big you are. All types and sizes of organizations can benefit from a bug bounty program. Bounty programs are typically not methodology based, and they can run in either a public or a private setting. They're very flexible. So one of the huge benefits of a bug bounty program is this concept of a flexible scope. So oftentimes you can move things in and out of programs. If you want something tested for a few weeks, push it into the program. When you're happy that it's been tested, you can pull it out and put more other stuff in. And in fact, we encourage that. It's usually good to make changes to scope and rewards and so on in order to maintain healthy traction on the program. But they can be run on a continuous basis, so always on, or on demand. So we can make them time bound as well. Really useful for discovery or emerging vulnerabilities that sometimes pen testing and automated tools won't catch or can't catch or miss. And it can run alongside all these other security controls that you're running or deploying. So it doesn't have to replace things. It can be a kind of a next level. And really that's kind of, from an innovation standpoint in the security testing space, that's really where Bug Bounty kind of sits. It is kind of that next evolutionary step beyond kind of consultancy-led testing to automated tools to Bug Bounty. And generally, 9 times out of 10, Bug Bounty will identify issues that have been missed or overlooked by other testing approaches. So it can complement stuff. It can be an extra layer. It can be a replacement, if you like. But again, very, very powerful testing approach. One of the things that we will place a lot of focus on, and it's important to get right in order to get the kind of results that you want to see, is hacker selection. Not all hackers are the same. We talked earlier about motivations and stuff, but also, people get involved in this for different reasons, as we talked about, and folks will have different levels of expertise. They'll have different amounts of time that they can commit to the bug hunting and so on. So one of the activities that we put a lot of focus on is making sure that we curate the crowd on programs to maximize engagement, and sort of careful selection versus noisy matching methods. If we carefully select the crowd, we tend to see, an increase, 70% increase in valid submissions coming through, because you're targeting folks who have experience on bounty programs, know how to report stuff, know how to validate stuff, and they're not going to report unverifiable issues. They'll typically push valid submissions to keep their profile healthy with us and so on as well. But we also then tend to see that correlates with higher payouts on programs, which again can in itself drive engagement, and then an increase in the priority levels. We've a vulnerability taxonomy that ranks vulnerabilities. We can talk about that if we get some time. But P1s, P2s, P3s are typically the kind of the levels of priority that most organizations should be concerned with. So it's a precise sort of matching approach that we like to take to make sure that we're getting the right skills attached to a program to kind of drive ROI effectively. So get better valid submissions and give better value back to the customers and so on. So it also creates a great experience for hackers themselves. So again, misalignment on skills and so on with programs can be a negative experience for hackers. We usually try to make sure that hackers are being invited into programs where they're going to perform well. From a crowd engagement standpoint, there's a few kind of key areas, again, alongside making sure that we're associating the right skills with the right program. It makes sense to ensure that if you're building out a program, that you offer kind of going market rates for rewards. So programs typically with above average reward ranges will earn more engagement with the crowd over time compared to programs with lower rewards. So it's incentive based, so this should make sense. So if you incentivize the right way, you'll typically get folks spending more time in your program. One thing to keep in mind is that on Bugcrowd's platform and on other platforms, there are lots of programs that hackers can get involved in. So it's key to engagement is key, and keeping hackers engaged on your program is key. And rewards and paying those rewards out promptly really helps maintain that engagement. So approve payments promptly as well. As I've said, delays in payments can kind of slow engagement down. Can also mean that you may not see submissions in good time. Because because hackers might feel that they're not being properly looked after from a payout perspective. Making open scope a goal is probably something that you want to kind of look towards in the future. So if you're starting out on this journey, you can start small. You can create programs with a small number of assets in scope, and then maybe for the future you want to get to a point where you're able to make the program more focused on an open scope approach. And then at some point, maybe you want to consider putting the program public at some point. But again, we still, as an organization, we see lots of organizations working with us to run private programs as well as public programs. But it isn't necessary for organizations to go public, but it can help. Impact on operations and pen testing. So next we look at, again, just some questions to consider if you're looking at alternative ways to make yourself more secure, and alternative ways to run security testing. Maybe these are some of the questions that you want to consider. Are you already outsourcing security testing? Or are you doing it internally? And what are the pros and cons? What are the challenges with those approaches? You may be thinking, based on the kind of the positives or negatives of these approaches, that there's a more effective way of doing this. And what might that be? Are you finding this kind of compliance-driven testing effective as a security strategy? Probably not. Is implied coverage with a greater depth of findings better than confirmed coverage with limited depth of findings? And what that means is, is it better to kind of have a strategy that gives you visibility of the full coverage of a testing engagement, or is it better to have findings that are more impactful? And maybe there's a balance to be found there. Maybe you can do both and use one testing approach to give you that coverage and another testing approach to give you that depth. Are you truly compliant by running those kind of checkbox pen tests, as a compliance measure? Is that real compliance? It's certainly probably not real security, and obviously that's a kind of an ongoing thing. But we do find that, like I said earlier, some of the testing methodologies that are routinely employed often miss high priority findings. So 9 times out of 10, assets that haven't been exposed to a bug bounty program but have been heavily tested with other approaches, 9 times out of 10, when they get exposed to a bounty program, oftentimes something interesting shows up, and that's just kind of fairly routine. We see that across. We were able to make that comparison, obviously, because we do pen tests and bug bounty, but it's quite an interesting metric. And you've got to kind of consider, does missed findings indicate security control failure somewhere along the way? Is there a gap in your framework? Probably yes. And your risk obviously then isn't being effectively reduced. So these are just some of the things that you should probably consider in relation to kind of elevating your bench with MBB or managed bug bounty programs. Coming back to the ROI topic, and looking at the total economic impact of managed bug bounty, we engaged with Forrester. I think I'm allowed to share this, but and feel free to reach out to us if you want to see the research paper that we put together with Forrester. But certainly from their review and kind of coming back to what does ROI look like and what does it mean to an organization. These are some of the metrics that we were able to capture during that engagement. So we kind of built a framework to measure ROI, or at least Forrester did, for a composite customer over a 3-year period. And some of the takeaways from that research paper are quite interesting. You may or may not agree with everything that's in it, but some of the useful percentages were organizations having to, by using bug bounty, they would they would be able to reduce their full-time equivalent headcount, introduce cost savings on pen testing costs, reduce breach-related costs as well, obviously, because bug bounty, like I said earlier, tends to surface things that often get missed by other approaches. And also then there's cybersecurity insurance savings that could be brought to bear. So reductions in premiums because you're leveraging bug bounty as a testing control in your framework. So some more KPIs. Coming back to this kind of elevation of your bench, just very kind of high level numbers, not committing to these as such, but just to give you a sense of some of the useful KPIs or metrics that you should consider when you're comparing pen testing or other testing approaches to bounty programs, and the kind of uplift you get when you add the crowd. So, as an organization, we can run, for example, an on-demand bug bounty for close to the cost of a large pen test engagement. Average reward amounts that we tend to see across all vulnerability priorities is about 800, 1200 per payout. Typical number of assets in an individual pen test program is probably one. Whereas with an on-demand program, you can put 4 or 5 into that program. We see average number of findings per pen test program is maybe about 9, whereas with a bug bounty, it's probably about 21. Now, we do have to factor in that there's probably more assets in the on-demand, but that's the kind of the beauty of bug bounty is that flexibility and the volume of scope that you can include in these programs. Usually 3x more findings, and again, typically including more assets, but we often find that the priorities of those findings are higher. So 4 to 5 times more critical findings than pen testing is typically identified in a typical bug bounty program. And then there's that comparison between pen tests, which routinely uncover lower severity findings versus higher severity findings in bug bounty programs. And there's reasons for that. Again, in pen tests are usually methodology based. There's time constraints, whereas with bug bounty, hackers can spend their whole kind of time engaged on the program just looking for individual types of issues that they're expert at finding, and could be very impactful and more esoteric or sort of business logic focused and so on. So and also then you've got to factor in that we're a typical managed bug bounty program will usually start with about 25 researchers and so on, grow, whereas a pen test is 1 researcher. So more eyes on, and more skill, a variety of skills and stuff like that as well that can be brought to bear. From a program standpoint, this is how it works with us and how we build a program and the different stages. And we've got different teams obviously managing different aspects of the program. So everything from scoping on the left through to getting those results, those validated results into your ticketing system or workflow or however you want to manage those results. So we'll do a lot of work on managing the program with you, scoping assets that are going into the program, getting an understanding for the tech stack, setting participation criteria, matching hackers with the assets based on that tech stack, and that's kind of a continuous thing. We put in place a whole team, customer success management team to run the program for you and with you. Once the hackers are engaged, as we get to this kind of hackers find and report vulnerabilities, obviously they're going to submit stuff into the platform, and then we have an internal dedicated triage team that will validate those findings as they come in, and then those findings are ready for you to kind of move on to the next stage. All of this is managed. We manage the payments for you. We don't approve stuff on your behalf, but certainly you'll have visibility of each stage of this process. We put issues once they're validated back to the customer to accept or not. So, like I said, we run some interesting research with Forrester. The the research paper that is kind of really the topic of today's discussion, I guess, is available for download from our website. I think we can probably share that after the call. It's worth reading through. There's a lot of kind of useful metrics built in there that you like. Again, you may or may not agree with all of them, but I think some of them are quite compelling. And then, as you move forward with adoption, there's I guess there's some other considerations to make around, your goals going forward with bug bounty programs, how you can kind of adopt bug bounty maybe more broadly in an organization, how you can commit more assets to a program, how you kind of build it into your software development life cycle and your kind of your release cycles, and run alongside other testing capabilities that you built into your security framework. But the platform itself enables you to kind of monitor these KPIs. There's lots of reporting and analytics that are built in. You can create triggers and actions within your workflows for different things that are happening within the program, whether that's kind of changes to scope, rewards, alerts when new submissions show up, that kind of stuff. There's lots of different things that you can consider to use and to more seamlessly integrate our platform and bug bounty into your organization. And it's important to keep iterating, which is what we call out here. Keep iterating, adding more scope, keeping engaged with researchers, and so on. And moving forward, I think it's also good to kind of get a sense of maybe revisiting what your risk reduction goals are. We can do both pen testing and bug bounty, and they can do different things for organizations. So pen testing is obviously a methodology-driven engagement type, pay for effort, where you get kind of coverage and it helps with compliance, although we do see organizations using bounty for compliance now as well. But if you want kind of high intensity pay for results output, then bug bounty is the way forward. And it's a great way for risk reduction to do. Ultimately, it helps organizations if they can get a good understanding of their asset inventory. We can help with that as well. We give you access to the right skills in a kind of an elastic capacity. We do all the noise filtering and prioritization for you. You've got the integrations into workflows, the platform, which introduces efficiencies as well. Lots of analytics and reporting and benchmarking, and helping you address testing for different use cases in different ways. We touched on this earlier. I mean, a nice slide just to give you a sense of, on that sort of DevSecOps journey, as you're kind of planning, designing, building, testing, and deploying assets. We've different types of testing models that can help you in that journey as well. You can kind of plug our testing into different stages of your software development lifecycle and the life cycle of your assets, with kind of integration points along the way. We have a big partner ecosystem. This is pretty much focused on vendors that we work with and have integrations with and so on. So we've got, integrations with Jira, Qualys, Teams, Slack. All of these kind of are designed to help organizations work with our platform more easily in a more sensible way. And then we've got a few kind of customer journeys described here. Like I said, we work with a range of different organizations. Indeed is a good example of one of our bigger customers. We do a lot of bug bash events with them. Motorola, another long-term customer who's benefited from working with us. And you can see that their journey from launch of bug bounty, early launch of the bug bounty programs, to kind of pen testing as a service that we do with them now, and VDP in between. Huge amount of work being done with US government at the moment as well. So the Department of Labor, for example, have a big VDP program running with them at the moment. And again, just another example of some of the different customers that we work with. We've got about 10 minutes left on the call.